Hi, welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and this is the Earth911 podcast. We've got a special interview today. Trey Granger, one of our stellar writers on the team, is sitting with Sandra Lewis in Phoenix, Arizona. She's the Director of Business Development for Envision Plastics. They're doing some remarkable work with recycled and recyclable products. And Trey, why don't you guys take it over?
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you, Sandra, for taking some time with us today. Jumping right in, why did you join Envision Plastics?
So that's a funny story. So I'm a former Earth911 girl, worked for Earth911 for about 8 years. But 5 years ago this month, I believe, I entered in, Earth911 into a contest for recycling, and I put Earth911 Search. I nominated them for this contest, which Earth911 ended up winning, which was very exciting. But in that process, I was recruited to go work for Envision Plastics, and I was very excited for the opportunity to work in the recycled plastic space.
Excellent. Can you talk a little bit more about the company? Like, what is what is Envision's mission?
So Envision Plastics, we're the second largest HDPE recycler in the United States. So HDPE, think of your milk jugs and think of your laundry detergent bottles. Those are kind of the two big categories. Anything with a number 2 on the bottom. So we recycle HDPE. While I mentioned we're the second largest, we are the foremost when it comes to technology and being able to recycle to a great level to make food grade. So we can actually turn a milk jug into a milk jug, which is very exciting, which no one else is able to do.
And one of the things that I've heard of a lot from your company is the ocean-bound line. How can we stop these plastics from ending up in the ocean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you were like me a few years ago, I thought that plastic came from maybe fishing vessels or cruise ship already originating in the ocean, but it's actually 80% of it's coming from the land. So if it's starting from the land and washing into the ocean, it's very obvious we need to intercept it before it gets into the ocean. We need to stop it when it's on the land and prevent it from ever getting into the ocean, because once it's in the ocean, what are we going to do? It sinks and it breaks up into microplastics. So let's intercept it when it's, in a full bottle form and still really good quality and be able to recycle it.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard you say before is turn off the tap, the idea that we stop it from getting in the ocean in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know your company has a goal of keeping 10 million pounds of plastic out of the ocean before 2020. How is this number chosen, and how are you progressing towards that goal?
Yeah, so we started this a year and 2 months ago, and we're right on track. We are over the 5 million pound mark. We went to the UN with this goal, saying that we are going to collect and recycle 10 million pounds of ocean-bound plastic. The way we came up with that goal is we did an assessment of ocean-bound plastic that we felt we could, like a goal that we could actually reach. So in our assessment, we said, okay, there is 10 million pounds we can actually collect and recycle. So it's a realistic goal, but it also was a push goal. It was going to push us to do something big in the space of ocean-bound plastic. All the years before, it's been small quantities, and we wanted to do a big number that gave companies confidence that they would have a good supply stream, that they could use this in their packaging. Because if we said, well, we're going to collect 1,000 pounds, there's not going to, companies, what are they going to do with 1,000 pounds? But when you have 10 million pounds, you can go to the big brands that can make a big impact to absorb this plastic back in. So those were the two factors that we looked at.
And are there any specific sources that you're getting the plastic from?
Yeah, so today we're working in a couple of countries. We're working in Haiti, which has been a wild success story. We're also working in some remote regions in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, which has also been a great partnership for us. And we're developing Honduras right now.
Excellent. And for those who aren't familiar, can you explain the difference in quality between plastic that's actually been in the ocean and then recovered versus some that just got on a beach that hasn't entered the ocean yet?
No, that's a great question. Envision has a lot of experience in this because we've recycled both. So 10 years ago, we worked with Method on their ocean bottle, where it was actual ocean plastic that was collected. And it was such a wonderful project we're so proud of, but it wasn't sustainable for the long term because you collect small quantities, but also the quality is really hard to work with. Think of plastic that's been sitting in the ocean, the sun, the sand, and the salt. What that does, it breaks it down. So when you have plastics that is being broken down, it's hard to recycle it to make new products with it. But when you have plastic that you are intercepting before it gets into the ocean, it hasn't been put through that process of being of degradation with the sun, sand, and salt.
So one of the things that I'm always curious about when it comes to plastic recycling, not just in the ocean, but just in general, you usually will see for aluminum cans a high quantity of recycled content, up to 70% in a new aluminum cans. Plastic bottles usually are only around 10%. Is there a reason we aren't using more recycled content in our plastic packaging?
Well, this gives me a great opportunity to do a shout out to some of the Envision customers who are using recycled content at 100%. So there is no reason why you can't do more. And I really applaud those companies, Vega, Isogenics, just to name a couple that are using it at 100%. Seventh Generation and Burt's Bees. These are great companies that are really committed to using post-consumer resin. And so companies that aren't using post-consumer resin or are using it as a small percentage, like you're saying, 10%, let's put some peer pressure on them. Let's put some consumer pressure on them and tell them they need to do better and up that, because there's no physical or chemical reason why they can't do it at a higher percentage.
Excellent. And I know our readers have asked a lot of questions for us. We've written a lot of stories about this China ban on certain recyclables, how they're being more selective. Have you seen anything more or less material from the MRFs, the material recovery facilities, because of this China rules?
Again, great question. So to be clear, HDPE, the number 2s, and then PET bottles, so think of your soda bottles, the number 1s, those have always had for the last couple decades, a very robust market in the United States, where most of it stays in the United States, it's collected and recycled and used back in the United States. So that market has been very strong. The difference we've seen since the China ban, it affected the paper market dramatically, because think of like all the shoe boxes we make over in China. The US was sending a lot of contaminated paper over to China. And if you're buying something to recycle it, you don't want contamination in it. So I don't blame them. So it put the onus and the pressure on the MRFs in the United States to make that paper cleaner and to bring the contamination way down. And at these facilities where they sort the paper and the plastic bottles and the aluminum cans, it's all on the same equipment. So they had to slow that equipment down to maybe half the speeds that they were running it at, so that they could get all that contamination out. So we're seeing less material just because they're running so much more slowly. And so we're hoping that as technology improves and they get more efficient at making a cleaner stream, that we will see that increase and get back to our normal supply. Very good.
You mentioned a little while ago about a few of your customers that are using high quantity of recycled content in their packaging. Are there any specific motivating factors you've noticed when a manufacturer approaches Envision?
So all my different customers do it for different reasons. The big companies we work with, like I mentioned, Seventh Generation, it's just core to their brand. It's who they are, it's who their customers are, and they're always going to do that, and they're going to push the envelope on that. And then you have other customers that have sustainability goals. So, I know Unilever and Procter & Gamble and Hinkle, they all have global sustainability goals out there that they need to meet, and post-consumer content is part of those goals that they're meeting. But then there's my favorite customers, and no, I love all my customers, but I do have some special customers where they've been like family-owned companies, and maybe they weren't using post-consumer before. And one example, a member of the family married an environmentalist, and she says, "You guys, you can't be using virgin in your packaging. You need to use post-consumer." And her influence switched the whole company from no post-consumer content to 100% post-consumer content. So that one person had a huge impact on what this company was doing with their packaging. And a second customer, I have a customer who makes plastic bottles, and he has a daughter who's a millennial. And when he called me up the first time, he expressed that his daughter had been disappointed and that he's making all these plastic bottles with virgin plastic. And he just says to me, I just want to make my daughter proud of me. And so that was his motivation for adding post-consumer content to his plastic bottles. So the take from that is that one person can have a huge impact on the decisions a company makes. And so my plea to Earth911 listeners and readers would be to put that pressure on the brands that you love. Put the pressure on them to add post-consumer content, that they can do it. There's no reason why they can't, and that you would support them in so doing.
So our voice matters, not just at the checkout line, but if you marry someone, push it that way as well. Right. I totally get it.
Or put the pressure on your parents.
There you go.
Whatever it is.
So what's the coolest product that you think has ever been made from Envision recycled plastic?
Well, I'm very biased in that question because I have a 3 and a 2-year-old. So I am inundated with toys in my house. So there's a company called Green Toys that makes toys with 100% post-consumer content, my resin from milk jugs. So they're turning milk jugs into toys, and they are definitely my favorite toys and my favorite products.
There you go. What is one thing that we talk a lot on our podcast about contamination and how consumers can do a better job of recycling? What is one thing you think our readers could do to ensure their plastics are properly being recycled?
So I have a lot of faith in Earth911 followers that they're recycling very well. So I'm actually going to give a different piece of advice.
Perfect.
We're still only at 30% recycling rate. So 30% of our milk jugs today are only being recycled. 70% are not. So I want to keep that peer pressure going, that you're good recyclers. Make sure that your friends and your family and that your workplaces, that they all have recycling. Put that pressure in your spheres of influence to get other people to recycle so that we can up that rate.
Excellent. And the more they recycle, the more you guys can turn into new products.
Exactly.
Well, I think that just about does it. Thank you so much for joining us, Sandra. I'll turn it back over to Mitch.
Thanks, Trey. Thanks, Sandra. That was a fantastic conversation. And yes, we completely agree. It's time for consumers to tell brands what they want. And if you want recyclable materials, ask them. A lot of companies, as Sandra pointed out, are already out there doing it. So take the time to find them as well. So this is Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth911 podcast, and we'll be back with you soon.